That was my first awakening. And at that point I got home and I'm like, the world started to be very different. I started to feel different. It was like I'd lived my life in black and white. And then all of a sudden there was this technicolor where I could like kind of move the pieces around. It was like I was swimming in this. And I just started to notice like this voice, this inner voice talking to me, and this intuition, go here, don't go there. And it was like, wow. I was like, whoa, what is this? And I felt very different.
Welcome to The Deep Coach, the podcast where we explore the transformational journeys that shape us and that propel us to change the world. I'm your host, Jonathan Hermida, and in each episode, we sit down with those who have journeyed into the depths of spiritual transformation and who are now reshaping the world through their presence and their work. In listening to these incredible human beings, you'll find insight, inspiration, and practical tools to support your journey as a coach and as a human being. Today's guest is Adrian Hales. Adrian is a deep transformational coach for leaders and coaches, but his path to this work is truly a unique one. He's a former infantry soldier in the British Army and a former professional rugby player whose life was defined by discipline, intensity, and a hyper-masculine drive that helped to create order in his life on the one side, but that ultimately disconnected him from his emotions and himself. In this episode, Adrian shares the turning points, awakenings, and inner restructurings that shaped his path. From the morning he questioned his entire life while standing knee-deep in cold mud, you got to hear that story, to the heart-opening awakening that set him on a journey of healing, self-discovery, and becoming whole. Adrian's an awesome guy, really deep guy with a lot of wisdom to share, and this is a great episode. I hope you enjoy. Adrian, it is an absolute pleasure to be connected here with you. And as this is a podcast where we're really trying to understand the transformational journeys of those that come on as guests, how would you describe Adrian Hales prior to the onset of your own transformational journey?
It's a really interesting question, actually. And I love that you've brought that into the conversation, Jonathan. It's great to be connected to you today and have this conversation. I think one of my coaches described me once as a bull in a china shop, you know, and obviously my background is the military and rugby. So it's very masculine. It's about, you know, forward motion. It's about breakthroughs. It's about, you know, doing stuff, disregarding how you feel perhaps about things. It's just about the warrior type mindset. So that was very much me. And that was life was driven a lot by fear and getting stuff done, and never really connected to my body, never really felt what it felt like to be home. Every time that I came back home and I felt that love, I felt that presence, that well-being within, I didn't even allow myself to get to that feeling. If I started to feel that presence, I would see that as boredom or not good. And that would then get me to take more action. So I would say I was very unconscious in how I was doing stuff. I was shining a light on what success means to society. So chasing that version of success that probably wasn't even mine. I didn't even fully know myself because I hadn't done the inner work, the deeper work. So life was just constantly like boom bust cycles, like taking action, then recovering. So I didn't really know myself, and I wasn't willing to feel myself as well, like really feel that essence of what home feels like. So that's, you know, that's really, and there's a wonderful picture of a lady that brought me up when I was younger. She was like my nanny. And I was speaking to my wife about this the other day, and there was a picture of me climbing a climbing frame. And she said that had no fear whatsoever. And there was a picture of me looking down at the camera, but I was climbing this climbing frame of like 2 years old, like really high up. So there was a fearlessness there. But what I didn't realize until someone pointed it out to me is that actually they were under me to catch me. So they were that supportive place to come back home. So yes, whilst I was being fearless, they were my home to fall into if I fell off the climbing frame. So Adrian pre-transformation was just fearless, but without my own home to catch me.
Powerful image. Powerful image. Speaking of being, last time we spoke a little bit about male culture in the UK and what some young boys, guys go through. What was it like? You mentioned you kind of grew up in a hyper masculine environment, rugby, eventually the military. What did you, as a young man, what were you internalizing? How did your relationship, you mentioned holding back emotions or not being able to feel your body. Can you describe a little bit about what it was like to be Adrian internally in that environment that you grew up in?
Yeah, there was no self-expression. It was like there were very, you know, clearly defined rules. The culture was clearly defined. So, to be able to speak about your feelings, speak about what's in your mind and have a real safe place to speak about that didn't really exist. The purpose there was you to be a soldier, to be the best part of the soldier you could be, and then to fit into that mold in order to be highly efficient and to perform as part of a unit. So obviously within that, you had certain things that you had to do as a soldier. So follow orders, respect titles, even if you didn't feel like the leader was a good leader, because there's a lot of scope around leadership as a skill, and it's not. Leadership is a relationship. You can never teach leadership learning skills. You can only teach leadership learning relationships and how you relate to people. And in the military, you have to relate to people whether you see them as a leader or not. The title is the title, and you have to follow orders. So there's straight away there's a finite way of being in a team. Follow orders or don't, play the game or get in trouble. So there's not really those places to speak to about how you're feeling internally, and in self-expression. You find solace in some of your mates there, and there is trust. But a lot of the time there isn't trust. When I was in many years ago, now it's changed a lot. But in those times, it was very difficult to open up. So I found a lot of that. What I didn't find in the army, I found that in rugby. Luckily, I found a sport which had looser rules. Still played for the British Army in combined services. I was still in the military, but with those, you found more deeper, softer connections. Like-minded people. It wasn't all about ranks. There was a bit more of a freedom. So that really kept me alive, and gave me a more of a sense of purpose. Until one day, it was about 5 a.m. And this is when it all changed for me. It was about 5 a.m. We got woken up and we went out into this field, pitch black. And in the distance, I saw all of these houses, lovely, where people are turning the lights on in the morning, getting out of bed. You can see all the city glistening, and we were in pitch black. And I was knee deep in mud in my shorts. It was freezing. And I thought to myself, what am I doing here? And that was that first question of like, where I had that realization, what actually am I doing with my life? And I think at that point, around 21, I really valued finding out who I was. Because I think the military served me in so many ways, but also it wasn't serving me at that point. Had lots of great things that I learned, like self-discipline, simple things like timekeeping, respect for others, looking at how you dress, and it gives you forward motion. But overplayed, it can become actually exhausting. So I think at that point I was like, I've got to leave now. So I ended up leaving the military, and with rugby, it's a little bit different because they're not so strict rules. But again, masculine environments, it is about finite success, failure, win, losing, and that can become exhausting energy.
Yeah. What initially motivated you to get into the military?
Came out of school with 0 qualifications. I think the award that I got at the end of school was the most kicked out of lessons. So I was really a rebel at heart. I was misunderstood. I was a bit of a misfit. I was a bit of a black sheep. I was just a bit unconventional. And interesting enough, that's a lot of clients I work with, people that are that, they're kind of that want to prove a point and take on the world. And actually, when I was younger, I excelled in sport because it was my outlet, but I really didn't enjoy how the schooling was created. It was all a very logical, and that's not how my brain worked. It was very creative. And when I was at school, I just didn't come out with any qualifications. So I had I was met with a transition point to go and work in a warehouse. Nothing wrong with people that work in warehouses, or actually make something of my life. So I chose seemed like the only route to actually, get me some self-discipline and help me actually not necessarily become a man, but a really good start off in life. So that was then 5 years at the end of school. And I remember there was something to do with when I went for my first test for the military, there was something to do with, I accidentally ticked a medical form, like a tick box. And they said, oh, you can't come in because you've ticked that box. And they were like, right, we've got to put you through loads of tests on this treadmill to make sure that you're fit to join the military. And I was like, oh my God, I remember sitting on the stairs at home. And I said to my dad, I'm not going to get in the military. What am I going to do? And there was some divine intervention at that point, I believe. And then they got a phone call and the guy said, hey, they want to put you on the tests for this running test. If you pass the test, you're into the phase 1 training. So that was a decision point. I kind of tested. I went for the test, didn't quite get in. They gave me a second go, and then I passed with flying colors. And then, I joined at 15 and 9 months.
Yeah, it's incredible because there was something about you at that age that knew that you needed this environment in order to take you to the next step.
Yeah. Now you're saying that, I needed order.
Order, yeah.
I needed order to understand to some order. Yes, it might not have been to ground like I have now. You ground the chaos. You get to the point where you be with yourself and your whole experience. But back then, I didn't even understand where my experience was coming from. I didn't understand thoughts or emotions, sensations. I was very externally focused out with it. So I just knew that I needed some type of order because my childhood had been chaos, at school, getting kicked out of lessons and just, I didn't want the order. Then I realized I needed order, and then order didn't serve me after 5 years. And I wanted to, not necessarily chaos, but to come out and find out who I was rather than someone telling me this is who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're coming out of the military asking these deeper questions. Where are some of the places you landed as you were asking these deeper questions of what do I want out of my life? Who am I, etc.?
Yeah, I think at that point it was the question is, the first question that started it all was, okay, what am I doing here? Like, what am I actually doing with my life? It was more like a kind of, what are you actually, like a real, like covered in mud, like what are you actually doing with your life? And then it was just like, right. And it was instantaneously. So I think an important distinction here is when we have a personal thinking of things, we intellectualize things, we try to find answers in the intellect. There's nothing in the intellect. But when we're in that space of home, and perhaps I was in that space of home because I was covered in water, knee deep in cold mud. And then I had an insight, and we all know what an insight is. It's where you're in the shower and you just get a realization. It's like a bubble bursting. The bubble comes up and poof, you get the insight, and it's not intellectual. And I just got an insight at that point. You need to go and find out who you are. So I didn't even have to wrestle with that. It was just like, okay, when am I going to go in and give my notice? And then I think within that week I went to give my notice, and it was unquestionable. There was once you have an insight, you can't unsee it. So then it was just unquestionable for me to move on. And yeah, I just really valued self-expression at that point and finding out who I was. I didn't quite know what that meant at the time, but later on, I got a sense that it was something about being in teams or being with people, but not necessarily with all the constraints of the military in terms of rules and respecting rank and all that kind of stuff. It was more constrained. There was more freedom in that. But I didn't quite know. The question led me on a bit of a journey, but I didn't quite know where I would end up.
What were some milestones on that journey?
I think the biggest milestone is I came out of that journey, and I remember I played a high level rugby for a period of time in the military, and I came out and I carried on playing rugby, and someone rang me and said, "Hey, would you like to go and play sevens rugby in Fiji?" And there was also another choice, which was to go on TV. And there was this show called Last Man Standing. And Last Man Standing was a show. And actually, my rugby coach said, "We think you'd be great at this." And I did a little audition. They invited me to the auditions. And funnily enough, it was at a military camp where I'd been before. So they were doing the TV back in the military. For, I think it was Channel 4 or something like that at the time. I can't remember the exact TV show. And basically the show was, they pick a team of people from different sports and they go against all the tribes in the world, around the world. It's called the tribal games. So they go against all these different tribes and races and combat and stuff like that. And I watched it on TV. It's really intense. And then I had a choice to go and play sevens rugby in Fiji. And then I chose to go and play sevens rugby in Fiji. And at the point in time, I think I came out of the military and it was a real crash landing because I don't have medical care. I don't have my food on the table. I don't have all of these things looked after me. And for months, I would still wake up with one eye open and waiting for the roll call. I was already waiting to get out of bed. And then I realized, oh, I'm in my bed at home. So it was a real kind of, letting go of that identity. So rugby gave me the order, but allowed me to be in the chaos a little bit as well. You could jump in and jump out. It was chaotic and orderly. So I went to play sevens and I played really well. We had a team of extraordinary players. We've won a lot of games. We've also got our ass kicked because they're the best nation in the world at sevens rugby. And luckily enough, I was rooming with this guy who was playing National League, quite a high level. And we got on really well. And I played really well. And I remember this experience. It sounds so funny now, but before I left to go on this tour, I was working in the supermarket and I knew I had potential. I knew there was something going to unfold beyond myself. Couldn't quite articulate that, but I just got a sense of it, right? And I always lived in hope and trust of, what would come. And I was on the drinks aisle before I left in the supermarket. That was a big deal. I was like the main man stacking the shelves in the drinks aisle. And then I went to do the sevens and I came back and they put me on the dog food aisle. It sounds so funny now, but they put me on the dog food aisle and I couldn't believe it. I thought, I cannot stay here anymore. They've taken me off the drinks aisle. They obviously don't think I'm good enough. Now I'm on this dog food aisle. And I was working nights and the smell of dog food while you're doing it. I thought, please, help me. And then next day I got a phone call and this guy said, "Hi, I'm from this National League team called Rugby Lions and we'd like to give you a contract to come and play for us." And I said, "Well, I haven't got anywhere to live, And he said, "Well, we're giving you a free flat to live in. So we're going to give you a free place and we're going to pay you. And then also we'll help you find a job as well." And then the next day he came down and I signed the contract. And then I never went back to that supermarket. And that's when I started to play the kind of National League rugby.
You mentioned something in passing, "Please help me." Who are you speaking to in that moment?
I don't know at that point, but the divine intervention, an ancestor, or, a past relative, or just anyone really. And I suppose now I know it could even be my intuition, I kind of, so, please help me out, I can't be here. This isn't where I'm supposed to end, Yeah. And then there was a few phone calls and then literally 2 weeks later, my dad drove me down to my flat and I started training the next day. It was just so surreal. If you just ask for help and kind of let go, then things just naturally come and wait in an expectancy of something happening. Something turns up, which is beyond what you think it's going to be. And I suppose now I probably know what that is, but back then it was just, you see people praying, don't you, when you're a kid? So you're praying or reciting, whatever it is. And I suppose back then I was just trusting something that was me, but was beyond myself, not really knowing. I suppose like a last ditch attempt. What I've been doing has not worked. So offering it up to something that knows me more than I know myself and just see what happens. Yeah. And then, and I just remember signing that contract the next day. It was just like, wow. I knew I was born for something beyond what I was doing. And that was confirmation of that.
So were you, in that moment, were you aware of the sort of cause and effect of, help me, and then boof, life showed up? Was that did you clock that in the back of your mind, or it just kind of went passing?
I wasn't aware of how you created it, how you put it with cause and effect. I am now, you're saying that. But at the time, I thought it was me doing it. I thought, and that's true. There's a duality in that. But at that time, I thought to myself, that, oh no, this is just a skill that I've learned myself. These things happen, but it's me doing it, rather than us doing it, perhaps. So I didn't yet understand duality, non-dualism and non-duality and something beyond myself. It was more about, Adrian's doing this.
Yeah. So there's a bit of a realization that on the external, hey, this isn't it. The military, this isn't it. The dog food aisle, this isn't it. These different things, this isn't it. At what point did the internal of, internally, who am I becoming begin? Because there's external happenings. What about on the internal side? What's happening during this time?
I wasn't consciously aware back then. I was unconscious to that. I was very much unconscious to that for a long period of time. Even, when I played rugby, I worked in sales as a sales manager. I worked for this company. I'm aware of all those transitions, but I always thought they were external transitions. I always thought they were me doing it. And there's a truth in that, but I thought it was solely me doing it. And then there's these external transitions that I was going through. And there were transitions where I was on purpose and I was off purpose. And then if I went too far off purpose, I felt like the transition naturally came in where I had a transition point where I wasn't totally aware of where my experience was coming from. I always thought that for a large portion of my life, instead of it being inside out, I always thought it was outside in. So sneaky that is, that thing. And I am aware now of seeing the world through that, but it's so easy to get pulled back in to that, thinking that the world is out here rather than within. So the answer to the question is, like, when I first saw the inner workings of the world, and this is only a glimpse, I was working in this role, and I was like an area sales type manager. And at the time, my boss went away on some leave for a period of time, for like 6 months, and I was to take over. And all I did was be with people, understand them, coach them, and just really inspire them, just to move them forward. Because in my experience, they'd been really downtrodden up until that point, that their morale was low. So I just learned all the things I'd learned from rugby and the military, and a little bit of NLP as well, which I learned in when I was coaching my teams. And that was learning NLP was the first time I started to know that, oh, hold on a minute, I've got an internal representation, beliefs, values, and thoughts and feelings. So there must, I started to realize that there was an inner world. That was the first part, because I started to ask questions and I felt different and other people responded different. So that's when it started to shift for me. And when the boss, who was quite critical of everybody, left, performance went up, morale went up. And it was such a joy to be with people and to coach them and to challenge them. Yes, I wasn't always flavor of the month, but we did achieve some awesome things together and had a lot of compassion for people. Then that boss came back and just started to criticize me and overshadow me. And I knew that was an environment I couldn't stay in. I couldn't stay in that environment at that point because there was too much order again, rigidity started to get like that. There was no flexibility or acknowledgement or appreciation. So I handed my notice in. And I remember this Christmas period, I didn't fully know that my experience was coming from myself. I thought my experience was coming from the job, but I'd seen glimpses of it. Okay. And I remember having this conversation with somebody, I think it was at my uncle's house for Christmas. And I was talking about my fears of losing my job and, this is what's happening and da-da-da. And they were saying, well, you need to document everything and make sure you're doing all that stuff. And after about 3 weeks, I just thought, what am I actually doing? A little bit like the military. I thought, why am I collecting all of this stuff? Why am I doing this? I spent 3 weeks worrying about this. Can't live life like this. And at that point, it was really interesting, but I met somebody who was in coaching and I was into like sales coaching type stuff. And they gave me a business opportunity. And it was something I'd never considered before, but it was my vehicle. And I thought, I'm handing my notice in. So on the first of the month, I handed my notice in. And they hadn't passed my probation at that time because they were being difficult with me, because because I wasn't fitting their mold of what I should be doing, even though performance was up. And they said, you've got to bring all your stuff back down. So I drove back down the motorway. Took me a couple of hours. And here's the shift that happens. I drove everything back, put my laptop back in the head office. I said, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and put everything back. And then as I got back in the car, I felt this huge relief, like a huge release. And I remember driving up this motorway and I saw the sun come up. And I don't know what happened to me at that point, but my heart opened. I just felt a heart opening, the heart chakra, you might say, opened. And I felt so much love and so much joy. And it was like the sun as I was driving up the motorway, as I was coming, the sun was there going down, but it was like glistening. And I just felt this huge sense of relief and joy. And that was the first waking moment. Many years ago. And that was my first awakening. And at that point I got home and I'm like, the world started to be very different. I started to feel different. It was like I'd lived my life in black and white. And then all of a sudden there was this technicolor where I could like kind of move the pieces around. It was like I was swimming in this. And I just started to notice like this voice, this inner voice talking to me and this intuition, go here, don't go there. And it was like, wow. I was like, whoa, what is this? And I felt very different. And that was very powerful and wonderful, but also scary. So that was the first glimpse that I got. Yeah.
It's uncanny. I had a almost identical experience handing in my notice. And I say it's still maybe the most euphoric feeling I've ever felt in my life. I had already decided that I was going off on my journey, but I handed in my notice and I got in my car and it was as if the heavens opened up and an incredible, sort of an amount of joy I had never been able to hold just overtook my body. I was in tears. I just felt the sun was just shining on my face. I felt expansive. So it was an unshackling is the word that I use. It just felt like I was unshackling from the old and now the entire world was ahead of me.
So powerful.
Right. So I can hear that in your story. And of course, when the entire world is ahead of you and in front of you and in you, yeah, that can feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
What do I do with this?
Yeah. It felt like, what do I do with this? It feels overwhelming. And I almost checking, someone put something in my drink. Like
Yeah.
someone put something, I feel like I'm hallucinating here.
Yeah.
I remember looking at pictures and they were like still pictures were like moving and had all these different intuitions guiding me. And it was an overwhelming energy that woke me. But at that point, that was many years ago, and I'd not done the work to ground it. I had nowhere to ground. So it was like this pinball machine inside me, just a ding, 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 ding. It's like I hadn't grounded it, and hadn't become an expression of my being. It was something I was trying to do, and I was trying to wrestle with this energy that was coming through, which is, it was not understood. I had to go on a journey to try and understand my very being. So it at the same time is liberating, but also very, very scary at that point.
Did you have anybody that you confided in at the time?
It's really interesting you say that, because at the time I didn't know why I did this, but I was this uncanny thing happened. I'll tell you the link into it. I was with my brother, and I was trying to wrestle with this. I was saying, this is what's happening to me. He didn't quite understand, but I was telling him these stories, and he was like, it makes sense. Like, this is weird. What's happening to you, kind of thing. So I don't know. Whereas, and I said, life is like snakes and ladders. So you go up the ladder, you make some progress, and then you hit a snake and it brings you back down. So, I mean, maybe I can just see this experience as just call it life is like snakes and ladders. This experience I'm going through, and I'm going down, that's what life's like. And he said, yeah, that's a great metaphor. And then I said, I was in the car with him. I said, patience is a virtue. What's that? What's patience? I don't know where it came from. Patience is a virtue. And I started looking, and it was the 7 virtues in the Bible. Patience is a virtue. Paciento, it's called. And we were driving in the car, and we said, let's go here. Let's go to the shopping center. So it took us about an hour to get there. And that intuition thing started to guide me again. Like, what is this? And he said, you go in that shop. And I thought, I'm not going in the shop. He said, go in that shop. So I went in the shop, and I walked around, and then this lady slammed this massive thing down on the till to pay. It was a game of snakes and ladders. So I'm just like, I said to my brother, get me out of here. Someone's watching me. So there's a snakes and ladders on there. He's like, no way. I'm like, get me out. Go. So this is, it was just like, so that's what happened. And then that evening, I looked at patience as a virtue. Where do you learn that? In church. And then I went the next day to this church called the Vineyard, it was called. It's not like, sit in those kind of seats and read hymns. It was like motivational content for life and messages that you can apply to life. There was no like, you have to learn the Bible, you have to follow God or anything like that. It was just a space for the first time that I've ever been heard, And I remember this guy at the front, his name was Chris, and he was the pastor, and he was unbelievable. He was like magnetic, and there was something in me that was drawn to that energy, consciousness or the love or whatever. And I just, something felt like at the time, perhaps that was missing within me, even though I know now that's there. But at the time there was a misinterpretation of like, I need to feel that. So when the sermon finished, I went down and spoke to him, and he blessed me, and he put his hand on me and blessed me. And I was like, and then I felt full. I was like, whoa, what is this? I just felt very different. And that was the first time that I had a place to kind of confide in, to kind of go into those environments. And it's a very, very different. I have not stayed in the church because it was time for me to move on. And obviously I live more connected to spirit now, more from that place. And obviously I value people go to the church if that works for them. At that point, I was there for a period of time, and it's not right. It's time to now move on to the next part of my journey. But that was a very profound experience. And I remember the time getting prophesized by somebody that came through. And this guy came, his name's Robbie Dawkins, I think his name is. He's from America. And he came to speak at this place. We're not talking about a little church. We're talking about, 500 people down there and 300 people can fit up. So a big auditorium. And all this stuff was happening to me at that point, like shifts within, like significant shifts and serendipitous things happening, which I just couldn't explain. I thought I was not going insane, but I just never experienced the world like that. And I thought, I cannot go to this because everyone said, would you like to come? Everyone's going. I thought, I've got to go, but I can't. I don't want anything serendipitous to happen to me. So I'm going to sit at the back so he can't see me. So I'm going to hide behind this pillar at the back with my friends. And I'll put a black t-shirt on so he can't see me and I can blend into the dark. Because I knew if they saw me, something would happen because that's what's been happening. So we were speaking and everyone was just full of love in this place. It was just profound. Everyone was so connected. It was unbelievable. And then at the end, he started picking people up. Started to say, hey, would you stand up? I've got a message for you. And then he said, there's a guy at the back with a black t-shirt on. I've got a message. I'm like looking at me. And he was like, yeah. Then he prophesied me, and that was an even deeper experience at that point. It's very profound. And then that took there was another thing, an opening at that point.
Mm.
It was just, that was, very profound.
Yeah. And what's happening? So how are you nurturing this then during this period? What is sort of happening then in your environment?
Trying to get to the gym. just that's the only thing I knew to get the gym. But I probably wasn't. I had that space where I could talk about what's going on and people understood from the church.
Sure.
But trying to explain that to a normal human being, and that's not to diminish anybody, but trying to explain it to people without people thinking, okay, someone's put something in your drink or, is very challenging. So I was dealing with that by just going to the gym, going to the sauna, going swimming to just keep my mental well-being going and getting out and being with people as much as I can. Getting out, being with people, putting my energy into my business at the time. So I chose to build a sales coaching business. So I'm really good at this coaching piece. Wherever coaching lends its hand, teaching just something naturally that comes to me. So at that point, I had a lot of energy. As you know, this energy comes through. I've got to put it somewhere. So I'm going to call myself a sales coach. So I just made it up. I just wrote down, I got an invite to this networking event. And it said, would you like to come to the networking event? I said, yes, I'll go. And I just pretended I was a sales coach. I had the ability to do it, but I'd never done it in the real world. So I just made it up. Adrian Hales, The Edge, I called myself, sales coach.
Yeah.
And I went to this event and it was a sit down lunch, proper networking. And I sat down next to this guy and he said, what do you do? I said, I'm a sales coach. And he said, I need one of those. Can I hire you?
Yeah.
So I ended up doing like 6 months sales coaching for him and his business. So it's just like, follow this intuition and it leads to kind of amazing places. We're here because I followed my intuition.
Totally.
Invite Leon to do a podcast. And he said, Jonathan's looking for great guests. I'll introduce you to him. So we're here because of that, intuition. Then it ended up doing 6 months kind of work as a part-time inside that company and very enjoyable. And I still did my kind of nutrition type coaching. I had like nutrition products and stuff I used to sell. And so I was doing a combination of both of those. And then that came to like a point where I had to do the next transition. So I moved from that area back to live with my uncle in the Midlands which is in the center of England. And I got to this place where I needed to go and find out who I was again. It felt like this whole experience was just too much for me. I need to go and find a place where no one can ever not find me, but where I can just be completely in silence to just process what's going on, but carry on with my business. So I knew a guy who lived in Spain, who lived in this island called Menorca. And I was at my uncle's house, and I thought, I really need some help. Like, again, like help. I probably knew that I was connected to something at that point. I wasn't unconscious. To your question earlier, I was more consciously aware. So I said, look, I need some help. And then literally within half an hour, my phone rang. And my friend said, would you like to come to Spain to coach rugby? We will get you a house and we'll pay you and you can carry on doing your business. I was like, yes. Then I flew out to this team that was underperforming. They hadn't been in the league for a year. And I thought, well, I could help them. So I was in this kind of like, if you imagine for a second, I was in this little 1-bedroom flat. It's the second floor, which overlooking this huge bay in the middle of in Spain. It was quiet. It was winter, so that it wasn't tourist months. So I had a lot of time. I had an open fire, and I was in this place, and I got to reflect on my life. And again, a little bit like when I was in that church, I thought, if I be here, no one's gonna find me. None of this energy is gonna not be able to get in. The energy within and this intuition and this stuff that was happening could kind of turn the noise down on it. And I supported this team, and they won the first game, and they beat the second in the league, and we started to make progress and get team cohesion again. And I did a lot of reflection there in my life. So, going onto the cliffs and journaling, I think I created like 29 questions to find your spark or something like that. And I answered them all honestly. And what it came out with was, in essence, coaching or a profession where I'm making a difference. And leading and making a difference. That was really clearly defined. So at that point I thought, okay, well, I know my purpose beyond this place now. And, and then I got home and I started to play this song. It's called Led Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah.
And I just love the song. I love it when it kicks in and it goes, it's just unbelievable song.
Yeah.
And I used to dance in my pants, basically, in this place, in this flat, because no one could see, and I was just dancing. And then this intuition said, you need to look in the comments. And I thought, oh no, not. I thought I'd found a place where people were not. Said, you need to look in the comments. And I thought, no, I'm not doing it. So I distracted myself, and he said, look in the comments. I looked in the comments, and there was this verse from the Bible in there, and I can't remember what it was, but it was 7:7 at the time. Something about seeking God, or I can't remember the exact verse. I thought, wow, that's really interesting. It hit me like a laser beam. It hit me. I was like, wow, like that is profound. Told me to look in the comments. There was something there. The next minute I heard is boom, 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 boom. So I lived in this place, and to get to it, you had to go down this little alley, no bigger than a door entrance. Then you go left, and there's my front door. Then there's these dusty staircases, like really old dusty. You had to walk around 3 steps. And then there was another door which connected to the lounge. You would never find that. You'd have to walk around. That door was knocking. And I said, and this is very profound. The door was knocking, boom, 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 boom. I was like, hello, who is it? And they said, they mumbled a name. I said, hello, who is it? And they said, we need to speak to you. I opened the door, and there were 2, people from the church. I said, how can I help you? And they said, oh, we've got a Bible verse for you. And it was I'm getting tingles when I say that it was exactly the same Bible verse that I read on the YouTube comments. I was just like, I just said, this guy came to me and I said, can I just lock the door? And he talked. I sat outside my flat and I looked at this thing. I said, this is what's happening to me. He said, yeah, it's like this, spirit, whatever's trying to communicate to you, it's communicating through you. And I was like, wow, this is so profound. And then we became friends. I wasn't into the going into the church piece, but we became friends. They became solace for me. And I had rugby club. I was part of the CrossFit there. And I had this, they were literally the next street down. And it was, it was winter time and they're just living in a flat, literally 200 yards. They invited me for coffee. We chatted and stuff. So that was very, very, very profound. And at that point, what happened was I met someone from America, and this is when I went to America, a few years before, and they came over to live in Spain with me. They came to kind of see me, and I thought there would be a relationship and love, and they quitted their job, and actually by quitting their job and coming over, they then came to kind of become a coach and follow their path. But it wasn't the right time at that point for me to be in a loving relationship with this woman. So we parted ways because I was still experiencing some trauma from the past. So it just got in the way of the relationship. And after, a few weeks, they decided to go back to America. And the relationship didn't work, they said, but they found their purpose. Which, actually coming to find love with me, it didn't work, but they then had the courage to follow their path. And at that point, I realized I didn't know how to love myself. So I couldn't love somebody else at that point. I couldn't give love because I didn't experience love myself. At that point, I knew that. And I remember they got on the plane back, and I wished them well and they wished me well. We ended on, on good terms. And I remember just walking down from the airport on this big dusty track. And I thought, really, everyone wants to be loved and they want to find love and all that kind of stuff. Thought it just didn't work. Because I wasn't connected, as I said, to that love myself. And I walked along this whole, this path. And I said, now what? Kind of thing. Now what? I thought I'd arrived and we could build a life and life was all good. And I've got so long to walk now, all the way back. So I hitchhiked, I put my thumb up, and then somebody picked me up. And I didn't share what had happened because it was quite a big thing, like that person then leaving, that woman then leaving. And I didn't find love, it impacted me. And I walked along and I just said, the only place I need to go is church. Obviously now we have coaches, we have therapy, we have these circles that you can go into, but back then it probably didn't exist as much. So I went into this proper old, like medieval Spanish church. And I said, I think I swore at the time, but I said, I need some effing help. And literally later on I got a message on LinkedIn, someone that wanted to connect with me, who was a coach. And at the time, I was like speaking to them and I was like breathing a lot, very heavily. And they said, Adrian, are you aware that you do that? And they asked me a question, something like, have you experienced something in life which stops you functioning well to your optimum? And I said, yes. And they said, can I share something with you? And I said, yeah. And they said, you need to go to therapy at that point. So something within inside me said yes. So I flew back to the UK and started my therapy journey with a very profound human being who helped me a lot. We did really deep work. And then all this kind of like unlovable stuff started to free up. Not good enough, all that kind of, the psychological stuff you have to move through. And I was at the time I went from, when I moved back to the UK, I had to sign on the welfare or the dole. And I went from, I shared this with you, I went from being on the dole to traveling the world doing leadership coaching on business class. So at that time I was working in therapy and it was helping me huge amounts. I was able to be with people. I was able to be with myself. It was a solace that I needed to find. and following that intuition. And so then I went into therapy and it really helped. And then I started to do work that was really, really purposeful. So that was thanks for asking that question. It's opened up some good stuff.
Oh man, I really love going through this track of understanding the life behind the transformation, because I mean, there are so many lessons in here, so many things that we can sort of pull out. One of the things that stands out is, and tying threads for folks is, some people decides that, maybe somebody knows that they're an artist and they're like, okay, I'm going to be an artist and pursue art. Or, I'm really driven by money and the pursuit of money. So I'm going to, really build a business or go, whatever forms somebody can go make money and go do that.
Yeah.
What I notice for those of us that at one point, we don't have that level of clarity, but we just know this isn't it.
Mm-hmm.
And we start questioning life. That is when we then enter into this conveyor belt, as I call it. Maybe it's something, another analogy is better, but like where life then starts taking over.
Yeah.
In a really, really profound way.
Yeah.
And then we are not, this is no longer our life. Life is now living through us and taking us to where it needs us to be.
It's a beautiful way of saying it.
Right. And so this is what starts to happen then, all these little synchronicities, these moments in time, the Bible verse 7:7, the person coming and our mind wants to grab hold and take control and say, oh yeah, this woman coming over, this is for love. This is going to be the thing. This is the person. But there's something much greater happening behind the scenes still.
Yeah.
And at one point in time when we're on this sort of conveyor belt on this journey, trusting life becomes undeniable. Mm-hmm. Like, meaning all this stuff it's clearly beyond me.
Yeah.
I better start listening. And you started listening.
Yeah.
And it's really
powerful.
Yeah.
It's always there speaking to us, whether we're paying attention. And most of the time I wasn't paying attention. So I didn't understand. But then I started to understand, hey, this thing's speaking, this intuition, this spirit is speaking through me. And it's also connected to something beyond myself. So, when you were speaking, it's like life as me, by me, and then through me. We go through those elements. So when I finished working in the corporate piece, because it was like an incubation of my talent. So I got to practice being a coach and to create workshops and deliver these things, and also certify in loads of different kind of modalities. So over that 4 years, it was really a lot of love and inspiration for, NLP and really learning that over a period of time, and then how to apply that and ontology as well, and neuroscience in coaching and ancient wisdom and projective coaching. So I just immersed myself in this experience, which was more about learning. I'm just fascinated with learning about, can I discover more about myself? And I'm committed to facing whatever fear comes through, because I thought about this the other day, actually, before. And this is coming to the podcast. It's like, I'm only facing myself. Yeah. Like, what's there to be scared of? And you start to uncover that. And then it was like, how do I apply that? How do I create in the world? So a little bit like that picture when I was a kid of being fearless in the world and being bold, and then a place to come home. But for me, that was always like me, and there's a degree of separation, as in there's me and there's a time-bound element in terms of being bold out in the world. But now I'm coming to realize that it's always coming from home. There's not a time. Yeah, it appears there's time, but there's not. It's always in the present. So the boldness and the love comes from me. It's not like I'm bold out here and there's love here to catch me. It's a constant motion. So then I was in this corporate job, and based on the work that I'd done on myself and the work that I'd done by applying, I was really good at what I did, at creating transformation, developing leaders in cultures. It's something that came natural to me. But on the same side, it didn't work for some corporate companies, because they just wanted you to do a good job and just play the game. And I loved my job when I was traveling around all these different countries doing that role, because I had freedom. There there was chaos and order. But then when I came into this other company, there was lots of promises that weren't delivered, and it was more about order rather than the chaos. Of course, I didn't fit the mold. We had a conversation about parting ways, and it was what's best for them, and it was what was best for me. So we came to a mutual agreement, and I moved on. And I remember this guy who came in, and this will speak to, your corporate kind of story as well. And perhaps you had advice as well of people that spoke to you, hey, you need to move on, whatever. This guy came to do some psychometric testing, and he said, look, off the record, you need to turn it down a little bit. Says you've got high skills in what you're supposed to be doing, very high, but the byproduct of that, you'll annoy people because you create change too quick. So he said, you stay here and turn it down, or you leave and turn it up. So I left at that point and turned it up, and that was kind of 6 years ago. And that was the start of self-employed as a coach, like 6-7 years ago. That was the real journey at that point.
Yeah, it's incredible. This journey of not it, this isn't it, this isn't it, this isn't it, until finally landing on this is it. This is it.
Yeah.
This is what I'm here. This was what this was all for.
Yeah. Yeah. This is what, it's a constant renewal.
Yeah.
To go deeper into yourself. And that, that journey over that period of time hasn't stopped. When I contemplate, is this it? I really feel that now internally. It's very rare that it's this external metric now. I really feel that within. So it becomes about coming home, and discovering my purpose along that period of time. So what started to happen over that period, that 6-year period, I created some great external results, and I also went even deeper within. So I became a master of my craft through going within and then applying and constantly refining, doing that, and then finding those things where, is this it? Isn't this it? And then naturally following that. But it was more of like a kind of, the sonar is on, so the signal is on, and I follow it, and then the signal's crackly. Okay, need to pause. And then finding, going back into coaching again, getting, invested a lot of money in my own coach, and people have invested a lot of money in me for me to be their coach. And I realized that in order for me to know the depth of who I am and show up best I can in life, I need to also have a coach, and also to go into the somatic experiencing world. Because I realized a lot of trauma that I've experienced in life, throughout my life, can be significant events, it can be insignificant events, but the body stores that information. So I've done all the cognitive, all the emotional, all the spiritual stuff, but there was still a nervous system piece of that, of the slowing down. And I can feel it now actually slowing down, because people used to say to me, slow down. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, slow down? Like, I haven't got a reference point. But now I understand. So what's been very profound for me is number one, learning how the human experience works, how wisdom, how insight, how thought works, how divine consciousness works, how deeper mind works, but also to invest in twofold, my own coach, and also working with a somatic experiencing practitioner, which is more about getting the nervous system to a place. I think that's so important, because I thought, wow, I've woke up, I've done the work, I'm spiritually aligned, doing the work in my business and all that kind of stuff. And now I'm arrived, and then started doing the somatic work. I'm like, wow, this nervous system started to then transform and shift. And for the first time, I felt my wholeness. And then I really found my purpose, which is all beings know themselves as whole and awake. And that's an infinite purpose that I show up to every day, and it permeates all different areas of my life. So that, you said, is this it? And And this is it, living from all beings know themselves as whole and awake. And that also includes me. So when I'm with people, my impact, if I'm radiating that, if I'm showing up as that, if I become an expression of that, other people will feel whole and awake.
If you were to put language on what it feels like or means to be and feel whole, what is that somatic experience of being and feeling whole?
I can feel it now. It's just like a warmth all over my body, like a vibrating energy through my body. So, you spoke earlier about how that inner experience, it was always cognitive for me, like stories or cognition. But now when I feel whole, I feel like a sensation of vibrating energy, like I can feel my whole body as I'm talking to you. So I'm talking to you now, feeling my whole body and the aliveness, the sensations of aliveness and the warmth in that body and the love and the being that's there, that's just is. And I can feel then the vibrations as I'm talking to you. And I'm also consciously aware of the whole room and everything within it. So I'm awake and I feel that body. Whereas before in my awakening journey, I was just awake, but I'd never felt the body. Yeah. So it's like the wholeness and the awakeness. And then, that doesn't necessarily mean when I show up with people, some people are going to feel that, get inspired, and then sometimes it might trigger people. So, I think that's the trade-off, is that sometimes when I show up as this, some people will connect to my Wi-Fi and they'll feel like inspired. It'll help them move to a higher ground. Or some people, will react to that. But that used to really affect me when I didn't know my purpose, because it was always finite. I show up and I transform, and some people like me, some people don't like me. And then I got in my personality about it. It started to become about poor old little me. Am I good enough? Whatever. But now I have a purpose that transcends that. And what falls into that is that if someone responds to that, or if someone doesn't respond to that, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything about me, because I'm fulfilling on a greater purpose.
How does the triggering, someone feeling triggered by your wholeness, how does that show up?
So yeah, if you ask a question in the conversation and someone reacts to it, if the intention is they're already whole and awake, but right now they're unconscious, perhaps, to that. Yeah. Then you ask a question to wake them up to that. And then there's either people that go, oh my God, I never saw that before. And then there's a shift. It's like Benjamin Zander says, when I'm fulfilling my purpose, there's shining eyes. So then he gets asked the question is, who am I being that my orchestra's eyes aren't shining? So there's sometimes that the eyes shine and people are awake. And it's a combination of acknowledgement, and the same as the climbing frame. I'm getting to a place of having no fear whatsoever. That requires me helping pick apart and unearth the personal thinking, the psychology, to get them to connect with the wholeness. And then, as that's challenging to have someone mirror that back to you. So some people are either neutral and they want to change. They go, okay, tell me more. And you contemplate and you're present and you disrupt and you kind of go on a journey together, and they make a little bit of progress. And you're like, wow, okay, cool. Maybe it's not full, like whole and awake yet, but they're making progress. Or then there's people that are in that place and you reflect back and there's insights and they go deeper and they go breadth and depth, and it's like inspiring. Then you might do that to people that are completely unconscious and they're not ready yet to hear that. But maybe their wholeness feels it, but their personal unconscious thinking just reacts to it or gets annoyed or whatever. Yeah. And then you can just wish them well and know that tomorrow they could have an intuition that changed their life, but they're not on that. They're not there yet. Maybe they have more healing to do, or they have a journey to go on themselves, and to make peace with that and to move on. But I suppose there is a cost as well, not a literal cost, but when we're being bold with people because we're standing for their greatness, and probably no one has ever stood for their greatness, and we're doing that, some people are going to step into that. Some people are going to react to that. And some people might not like me, or get annoyed with me. But Jim Carrey said, and I love this quote, he says, when we create ourselves to make it, we're going to have to either let that creation go and take a chance on being loved or hated for who we really are, or we're going to have to kill who we really are and fall into our graves grasping onto a character which we never were.
Powerful.
So it's to your point, beautiful point that you said earlier is about, something wants to happen through me. When I'm stuck in poor old little me, I'm like, as me, by me, I've got to make life happen. Life through me, I'm not there. I have to just surrender what comes through. And of course, the personal mind interprets it back. But I'm committed to fulfilling on my purpose. And if at that point I was, rude or trying to be, aggressive towards somebody or whatever, I'll clear it up and say, hey, I wasn't informed. You can count on me next time to have a powerful conversation.
Yeah.
So I can be responsible and evaluate myself against my purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. So you find yourself getting overly excited in a sense of of that potential within them, which then articulates something in a way that perhaps doesn't resonate with their ideal form of receiving communication. Is that what ends up happening?
No. So what happens for me is similar, kind of. What happens for me is sometimes in not all coaching conversations, but some, or conversations talking about coaching. It's not even coaching, is it? It's like, it's powerful spaces where magic happens. Can't really call it coaching. It's miracles happen in these spaces. People profoundly transform their lives. The people I work best with are willing to look, are willing to do the work, are willing to go, oh my God, do you know what? You're right there. Or they're willing to contemplate. The people I don't work best with are the ones that just disagree, don't do the work. And I suppose in those conversations, it shows where people are at. But I always ask for permission. And people often ask me, can I have your feedback? I'd love your feedback. And I say, are you I'm happy to give you the feedback, but it will be honest.
Yeah.
Or it will be direct, no fluff. And they say, yeah, no, I definitely want the honest feedback. I definitely want the honest feedback. And I always say, are you sure? Yeah. And they say, yes. Then they give the feedback and then they react to the feedback.
Yeah, that's so fair.
If you just see where somebody's at,
Yeah.
they react. I can obviously help, have another conversation about that, or if they love me or hate me, doesn't matter too much. But I always know this: if someone's like, "Oh my God, thank you so much," or they're kind of like in the middle ground or a bit forward on, they're like, "I don't quite know what you mean, but can we have, can we explore it a little bit more? I kind of sense what you're saying." Or that, "Oh my God," my most recent client was like, "You're absolutely right. When can we speak?" Great. But those people that like, don't ever talk to me like that again, and then they defriend you, because that is a consequence of living boldly, fulfilling your purpose.
Yes.
Some people will love you and some people will hate you, as to Jim Carrey's point of view. And when it was always about personal Adrian, right, wrong, good, bad, then you get impacted. But when it's a purpose which is infinite, like all beings know themselves as whole and awake, however they respond doesn't stop me from fulfilling on that purpose. And some people that get like that, they end up coming back around or doing amazing things.
Yeah.
So that's been my experience.
Yeah, because sometimes somebody receives that feedback and they may get defensive in the moment. And then that seed has been planted though, and it's sort of there simmering in the back, and they have these moments of self-awareness along the way where like, that Adrian guy was actually right. I haven't been showing up powerfully. Shit, what does that mean? And now you have to confront yourself.
Yeah.
And
You
that's
have
not
to
easy
confront
for a lot
yourself.
of
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
What's that?
And that's not easy for a lot of people.
No,
Yeah.
it's a challenge when you have that mirror, but I wouldn't say stuff to people I was not willing to hear.
Yes.
So I'm engaged in that work now.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm not practicing what I preach. I'm practicing what I preach. So I'm living that experience and then I'm reflecting that back to people. And as you know, there's a lot of coaches that I've found who are not doing that. And it's not a judgment against them, but there's fears about stuff like personally and will I be good enough? Am I competent enough? Can I make this business? Can I be successful? Whatever that might be. And they're still going for the experience. So I've been there many years ago, but there's a lot of coaches that find it challenging, and if I don't stand for their greatness, sometimes they might never do that. And I think to add to that is that I always let people know where they're holding themselves back. And I always leave it on what's possible. And whether somebody chooses to respond to that, if that's coming from my purpose, however that person responds to that is not my responsibility. If I evaluate myself in the week and I know that, okay, I dropped the ball with that person, I can go back and clear it up. But I also know the nature of living your purpose, and this, is that you're going to create agreement and disagreement. You're going to create people that are open and closed. You're going to create more people awake and whole, or you're going to push people on another part of their journey. And that's okay.
You recently stepped into fatherhood for the first time.
Yeah.
What are you noticing? In what ways is fatherhood changing you as you experience it so far?
I still go into those modes where I'm in that wholeness and awakeness, but then the mind takes over and I start, worrying about things and got to do this, got to do that. Like, that's just normal. But my daughter shows me that none of that really matters. In the grand scheme of things, none of those things matter. What matters is being with her so that she's, connected to the world and interacting and doing what's best for her. So it just, changed me. It slowed me down a lot. You have to be very tender. You have to be very patient. You have to be totally, connected because, as you know, children respond to how you show up and how you are. So they give you a reflection. They're always going to cry when they want milk or are tired. But it showed me to be really, really connected. And there's like a joy or a love that I haven't felt in my heart before. When I'm being with her, you'll know this. There's like a joy or a love that I feel. So that's definitely how it's changed me. It's made me more connected to my purpose.
Yeah. It does that. What's incredible, as I was mentioning last time, is that love is just going to continue to expand and grow in a way that you didn't think was possible. It's unbelievable.
Amazing.
Yeah.
The love expands and grows, and just the love expands and grows within. It's like it's like today I was doing this podcast, and I think I spoke to you, is like whenever I've done my coaching business on life where it's been very rigid, I'm starting to realize that in this, amazing podcast. I'm starting to realize that, okay, I don't enjoy the order so much, but I believe that putting order on myself will hopefully, I can, there's a misinterpretation sometimes, put order on and then you're living the life you want. And actually, no, live the life you want and then just show up to do things you enjoy, like podcasts like this. So this morning, I usually start work early and I didn't. I just went for a walk with my wife and took my daughter out. And I just did the morning and I've jumped onto this podcast in the afternoon. It's just like order is important, but also, taking all that out as well. Because when when I'm here to live life and live my coaching business, live life and don't have to schedule everything. No, just hang out in nothing and then just, let intuition guide you. I know that can be quite a lofty idea for people, still having things I enjoy, but doing it with a bit more looseness rather than rigidity. So that's still a lesson I learned. Still a lesson I'm learning.
Yeah.
And I suppose my daughter's teaching me that.
It's a constant calibration for sure.
100%.
Yeah. As we begin rounding up here, if you can leave listeners with an invitation, something to reflect on their own transformational journeys, what might that be?
I think one of the most important things as coaches is really learning who am I being and who do I need to be, and embodying that everywhere you go, not just in a podcast like this, but embodying it as a way of being for life. And, asking the question, who am I being? If you're being unloving, or if you're being stressed, if you're being overly driven, just asking that question, who am I being? You can start to see who you're being. I'm being connected and loving and inspired now. But just asking that question, hey, who am I being? And if you're being connected, loving, inspired, you'll have a seed from your being. Being is the seed of doing, and doing is the flower of being. So when you're coming from that being, when you do the doing, you'll get the results from that being and doing, but everything comes from being. So asking that question, it just gives you the self-awareness. And then also, who do you need to be? So if you are, okay, whatever comes through, who do I need to be in this context? Relationship, business, health and fitness. And then you choose that way of being, and being doesn't need any extra, like work. You don't need to go internally. It's already part of you. So just asking those questions, who am I being? Who do I need to be? Are very important. But before that comes purpose. So if Jonathan was inviting me to a party, you would invite me because all beings know themselves as whole and awake. That's what I bring through my life. So when people spend time with me, that's who they become. That's who they experience themselves as. So question for you, if you're a listener, to reflect on, why do people invite, why are you here? And why do people invite you to the party? And then once you've understood that, you understand your purpose and you understand the impact you're here to make. And that impact transcends your business. It transcends, you show up everywhere. You show up to the coffee shop like that. You show up to the health and fitness place like that. You show up to your business like that. So why do people invite you to the party? And then that becomes the purpose over everything that guides your being and doing in all the different areas.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I invited you to this podcast party because I know you to be whole and awake. And your story is a testament to the transformational journey. I mean, that you really being willing to go and venture into the unknown, willing to, go where nobody else has gone before, in your own way, in your own life, in your own universe. And your life is now a fruit of walking into that abyss, which has now borne the fruit of your life and the service and the family that you get to call yours. So such a gift to be here with you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your presence, your love. And I'm excited for listeners to listen to this episode.
Yeah, no, Jonathan, I really appreciate being here with you here today. And you're such a brilliant interviewer because you have real authenticity, you have real presence, and you have real experience. You're not just talking from lofty ideas, you're talking through your own personal journey, and you're willing to ask questions in the moment that other podcasters I've never heard ask. So you're so in the moment with me. You ask those intuitive questions, which get me to realize parts of my journey. Like when I listen back to this, the stuff that I probably haven't even thought about. So some of the things you got me to contemplate, I'm already, ideas are coming up. And I realized from our conversation is actually, I'm at another transition point now in my life. Actually, I'm being called to play a much, much bigger game. So I realized that the last part of this conversation. So I keep doing the podcasts because you're brilliant at them.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being with us today. To learn more about today's guest, visit our podcast landing page at www.podcast.centerfortransformationalcoaching.com. You'll find links to their website, social media, and anything else they might want to share there. And if you're curious to explore more about our work, our trainings, or the deep coaching approach, you'll find everything at www.centerfortransformationalcoaching.com. A new episode of this podcast releases every 2 weeks, so please subscribe wherever you listen to stay up to date. Until next time, stay present, embrace love, and continue sensing into what life is calling you toward. See you soon.